Welcome back to another episode of the Pagcast. So today I'm with James Cybulski, who is the NHL 20 play-by-play. Thank you for coming on today's Pagcast.
My pleasure, Michael.
Before we get to the questions, how are you doing today?
I'm amazing. My hands are insanely dry from washing them way too much these days, and I keep forgetting to moisturize. So I've been really good with hand washing and really bad with moisturizing. Does that make any sense?
Yes, because I actually have the same problem.
Yeah, but you're younger than me, so I feel like your skin's probably in better shape than mine is now. I think I'm looking like I'm like a Tales from the Crypt. I think these hands look like or something.
Yeah, well, I have to say that I do have some dry spots on my skin. It's not doing too well.
Okay, so we're both in it together then.
Yes, we are. The first question I got is, what made you want to go into sports journalism?
For me, I think I was just always a big sports fan. I think it came from a passion, and that's where, for me, I think I recognized I was probably a lousy athlete, loved to talk, and found a way to kind of maximize both, where I could talk, which I certainly did a lot of, according to family and friends over the years, and in addition to that, just always had a passion for sports. I mean, I loved reading the sports section. I loved watching the highlights, all this, just looking at certain broadcasters and wanting to emulate them when I was younger. And so always had that passion. It was more of a dream to want to call Game 7 of the Stanley Cup as opposed to, playing in it. I think that was probably, I mean, don't get me wrong. I lived that a million times in street hockey over the years as a kid. But that was, I think it was something I was always kind of into. And I felt like that was something I wanted to do from an early age.
So was there someone that influenced you in your life to become a broadcaster?
Oh, I think probably, it was various names. I think for me, it was, I was always a big fan of Bob Costas. I think I was a big fan of Bob Costas, Ron McLean. Who it's funny, Ron is a colleague now, and Ron was somebody I certainly looked up to for a long time as well. And it's for the longest time I would still kind of, oh my God, I'm talking to Ron McLean, and thinking, wait, I gotta work with the guy. So Ron and Bob were two guys I really admired. And it's funny, like I was an old wrestling fan as a kid, and Mean Gene Okerlund was somebody I watched and thought I liked Mean Gene. So there's that sort of quirky element as well that, the different types of broadcasters that I liked. And obviously Bob Cole from a play-by-play standpoint was somebody I liked a lot. Just a lot of different names over the years that come to mind. Vince Cellini on CNN, who I think is still at the Golf Channel nowadays. I mean, or even the NBA TV as well. And Vince Cellini, I was a huge fan of for a long time. Brian Smith was a local sportscaster in Ottawa I grew up watching. And then just some of the network affiliate guys, we used to get for American programming or networks as a kid growing up in the East. We used to get Rochester, New York affiliates, and there was a guy, Rich Funky. What a cool name, right? Rich Funky was a sportscaster, and I was a little kid, and just, man, this guy just seems like he's cool. He knows what's up, right? And just that sort of, guy who just kind of had an air of confidence, almost like a swag, if you will, long before it was called swag in those days. And certain broadcasters that I liked. I was a big Michael Landsberg fan. When Michael first started appearing, I loved his delivery. He was just so smooth, and to later work with Michael, and Brian Williams as well, and certain approaches, and then listening to certain talk show hosts over the years as well, that individuals you just kind of wanted to borrow and take and tweak and kind of customize into your own sort of style. So probably too many to name them all, but I think I just rattled off about a dozen for you there.
Well, that's good that you have a bunch of those names that you looked up to and wanted to emulate.
Yeah, and that was it. Like, it was just, to kind of along the way to have that opportunity to have that opportunity to just to be a passionate sports fan and see certain broadcasters. I was an Expos fan as a kid. I mean, listening to Expos games on the radio with Dave Van Horn, where games were more on the radio in those days than they were on TV. And I was a huge Dave Van Horn guy for a long time as well. And, certain play-by-play guys.
So you said that you weren't the greatest athlete, I believe.
You remember that?
Did you play? Hold on. Did you play any sports, whether it was in high school or university?
I played a lot of minor hockey growing up. I played about 10 years of minor hockey, and played up until I guess I was probably about 14 or 15, and then felt, okay, I guess it's time to get a part-time job. This probably isn't going much further. So I played a lot of minor hockey, played a few years of soccer as well. And that was the sort of thing. I played a lot of pickup basketball, never played really organized, but man, I love playing basketball with my buddies along the way. So that was always kind of fun.
Yeah, that's good. I bet you have a lot of bragging rights with your buddies when you play pickup.
Yeah, I don't know I don't know what sort of bragging rights I would have. I mean, nowadays, I guess, but yeah, no, when I was younger, I mean, it's funny. I mean, I think I was quick enough, or I could skate okay. I had hands of stone playing hockey. So absolutely zero hands. I would be, if I was playing in any sort of, I would probably be a grinder. I would definitely be an energy line guy, bottom six forward for sure. I could skate, but I definitely, not a lot of finish.
You started your journey as being a broadcaster at TSN. What was that process like?
Well, I started at the Score before I started at TSN, and I'd worked in radio at first for a few years in Ottawa, where I kind of broke into the business, and I had grown up there. And then, worked at the Score for almost 8 years and had a tremendous experience. I mean, we were all young. So many of us that kind of started around the same time, Sid Sixero, Elliot Friedman, Tim McAuliffe, Martine Geyer, the Cabby. I mean, the list goes on and on with so many of us along the way. And to see so many talents that are still thriving all these years later. Anthony Shoshone was the guy who really kind of hired a lot of us and gave us our opportunity. Clearly a good eye for talent for Anthony. And, Patricia Bowl, I think, was the Score's Ottawa bureau, in kind of the early mid 2000s. And, I think she's, one of the anchors on, CTV News now in Ottawa as well. So pretty cool to see all these people doing so well. But, when I made the jump to TSN, that was, in a lot of ways, that was big. It was really emotional for me to leave the Score at the time, but it was that opportunity to go to TSN that, part of you're always kind of fighting this uphill battle, trying to, to get that street cred and get recognized, and, to try to get that opportunity. And then to go to TSN and kind of it's like a dream come true. I mean, that was kind of, in a lot of ways, one of the pinnacles. I mean, the top sports network in the country at the time. And, to be involved with, Sports Center and, just the immediate street cred that I noticed right away. Like, how many people all of a sudden that remembered you, the Score, you got street cred, you got a lot of respect from your colleagues in the media. But man, your profile and your visibility just went up tenfold going to TSN. And, I was lucky enough to cover the World Juniors and kind of be that reporter for several years. That was a lot of fun. And, the experiences, whether it was covering the Winter Olympics, for TSN and part of that CTV Rogers consortium back in 10 years ago. And all the benefits that came with it, live event reporting for the NHL, or, covering playoff series for TSN, covering the, the CFL and sidelines, live events, and how many opportunities to do a lot of those, traveling around. I mean, my goodness, covering the first ever NHL game in Europe in 2007. And being flown over to kind of hang out in London for a week and then go cover Raptors camp a week later in Venice, Italy. And that was cool. I traveled the world working at TSN. It was a lot of fun. And, They gave me opportunities and had an experience. It was tremendous. I really, really enjoyed the adventure. You worked hard. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, there were a lot of days on the road and, a lot of time at airports and traveling around, but it was a great experience there. And then had the opportunity to go to Sportsnet in 2013.
So then you said that you worked during the Olympics. Where were you during the golden goal that everyone knows?
I was stuck on a plane waiting for takeoff. It was my assignment in those days. My assignment for the Olympic Games was long track speed skating. And so I was in Richmond, so just south of Vancouver, and there was a beautiful Olympic oval that had just been built and covering speed skating at that time. And the event finished a day before the Olympics wrapped up. And I hadn't really paid much attention at the time to the schedule when it was being made up months before. And they said, "Hey, listen, we need somebody to kind of hold the fort for That's Hockey and fill in for Gino Retta on the Monday when the games wrap up. Are you okay to come back a day early to kind of take care of that?" "Yeah, sure, no problem, whatever." I figured, it's been a month that I've been on the road. I'll be welcome to, I'll probably have had my good time working and partying and visiting friends from Vancouver. So I'm ready to get back home to Toronto and go from there. And the game started. I think it was around a noon puck drop in Vancouver on the West Coast, and I was. I was like, oh man, I got to go to the airport here. And so I watched most of the game in the airport and kind of in the terminals. And then all of a sudden the U.S. tied it late, and I had to get on the plane, and it was like going into overtime. I'm like, holy crap, like, how am I going to miss this? And they were just like, this is your last chance to get on the plane, and it's going to leave. And honestly, let me tell you, if you've ever tried to get out of a city after a big sporting event, and I'm not even talking Olympics, it's hard. Like, it's a pain in the ass, man. And so it was like, okay, there's no other flights available. I got to get on this, and that's my cue. And so it was like, this is insane. How can, like, the biggest moment in, like, Canadian sports history, and I got to, like, I'm going to miss this, And I picked up the phone and I called my parents and I said, put the phone to the TV right now. You go with what you know, right? You call
exactly.
Mom and Dad. You call Mom and Dad, like, working in this business. And it's like, Mom, Dad, put the phone to the TV. I need to listen to this. And kind of explain the situation. And I just listened, and then literally, like, I think 3 minutes or so from the time they put the phone, and boom, next thing they were screaming. I couldn't even hear the call. They were like, ah! They kind of picked up the phone. Canada scored. I'm like, all right, I figured that out. Crosby. I hung up the phone and just said, hey, Crosby scored. And then quickly, they quickly turned around and put us connected the phone, and it just said, the pilot came on and said, all right, Canada scored, and boom, we fired up the plane and spent the next 5 hours in the air flying back to Ontario, which was and just this quiet, muted, zero celebration, to where, like, the entire country was in this euphoric celebration.
Yeah.
That and everybody just kind of, oh, hey, Canada scored, all right, and then it was quiet. So where was I? The worst place possible. Yeah. Not in front of a television.
You must have had a gut feeling, though. Like, you board the plane when USA ties it, and the planes don't have good Wi-Fi. So
I'll tell you, this is also 10 years ago, right?
Exactly. So, so we don't have the technology Wi-Fi that we do have 10 years today.
No. And 10 years ago isn't even that long ago when you think about it. But, like, even like video streaming on your smartphone now, for that matter, right? You didn't really even have that. So
no.
I think I was still a BlackBerry guy at the time. So video at the best of times was grainy with respect to that, or even getting, videos or GIFs on Twitter to that point. Like, it was still early days.
Mm-hmm. You said that you left TSN to go to Sportsnet. How big was that for you and your family?
It was huge, for one, leaving TSN, which was a great company for me and treated me very well. And it was a move across the country. So I had spent some time here living in Vancouver in the early 2000s, and it was an opportunity to come back. And so it was a massive move at the time to kind of leave TSN and then come over to Sportsnet, and then just how the business changed in so many ways at the time too, where it, all of a sudden, the hockey deal went down not long after I got started. So all of a sudden Rogers got the rights for that. And then they changed kind of the approach from a regionalism standpoint to more of a national focus. So there was some major changes that were made. And it was like both personally and professionally, it was a massive change.
With the changes, did that open up more opportunity for you to take?
It was probably a mixed bag. I think there was initial thought that it would probably present more opportunity. And I think it was probably, I think depending on how you look at it, I think for me, I was doing a show locally every night from a highlight standpoint, 5 days a week. I think I'd be lying if I didn't think I felt like I wanted to be involved into the hockey package and having my experience with the NHL and TSN. I would have liked to have been involved with that. But, I also understood, when I made that move to Vancouver, oftentimes, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Ottawa, Montreal, Winnipeg, a lot of those cities are all kind of more bureau cities in this country, where you kind of set up your hub city is Toronto, in the sense that, that's where the broadcasters are. That's where everybody is. And so in that sense, when you're going through all that, I think it was just more, I kind of conceded when I made that move from Toronto to Vancouver. I kind of conceded, I'm going to probably give up some opportunities here, but this is, also lifestyle as well. So I think I was fine with that. But, probably selfishly, it's like, oh, you kind of want to be where the action is, at that stage. But, but it's funny how, here we are now with opportunities that present itself with the opportunities that presented itself from an NHL 20 standpoint. I don't think I would have had that opportunity had I lived in Toronto. I don't think I would have had that opportunity presented to me there had I not. So
yeah, because the EA Sports.
I'm just doing an interview here right now.
The EA Sports offices are located in Vancouver. So with you moving to Vancouver, that presented you the opportunity to record with them.
Yeah, it did. It totally presented the opportunity. So, and that was, they were looking for a new play-by-play guy going back a couple of years ago, or a new broadcast team. And so, I lucked into getting an audition, and so from that, I, took advantage of the opportunity, and I was able to, get an audition, and I guess I fooled somebody into thinking they liked what I did. And and so then, got a call back, about 6 weeks after that, and it was like, oh, okay, this kind of worked out, and it just kind of went from there.
Did you ever get nervous while recording with EA Sports that you were going to have a hiccup here or there?
Sure. I think it's human nature to be nervous, every once in a while. I think you run around and you chase what you want to be great, and you want to going in for the audition. I was certainly nervous the first time, and then the next time I went in, I was because then you all of a sudden get to a point where, okay, I want this,
exactly,
you want to win, right? And I don't know if anybody goes into an event or a competition or anything without wanting to win. So I guess from that sort of mindset, I was hopeful, and I think they liked my approach, and it seemed to translate well. And so I guess I finally got my dream of calling a Game 7 in the Stanley Cup, just not the way you conventionally
exactly
dream of it, right? It's it's Game 7 in whose ever living room or man cave or woman cave for that matter, where they're playing.
Yeah, exactly. So you said you lived in Vancouver in the early 2000s. Did you ever, I know this wasn't early 2000s, but did you ever experience the riots that took place after Boston beat Vancouver?
You know what? No, you know what? I was working back in Toronto at the time in 2011. I had just launched. I was working for TSN, and we had just launched TSN Radio. So I was hosting a drive time show at the time, and my youngest daughter was born, I think, the night of Game 3 at the Stanley Cup Final. So I was kind of off for I took about a week or a week and a half off to just kind of hang at home. And so I kind of just watched the Cup as a fan. And then when Game 7 played out the way it did, and then to see that unfold, you kind of started seeing on social media, like,
Yeah,
oh my
it's
gosh, I just
crazy.
saw somebody fall and somebody's getting hurt and people are acting like jerks all of a sudden out here. This is kind of crazy. And then the kind of, some of the news channels were starting to take that stuff live, and it was just like, wow, this is terrible. And you
Yeah,
kind of
like they
watch
were
for an hour
setting,
or so.
cars on fire, buildings on fire, raiding. It was
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. And you know what? I think a lot of people were punished and idiots that, bad apples that kind of spoiled it for a lot of people, but it was sad. And I think if you talk to people that were here at the time in the moment, they would tell you that, those weren't Canucks fans. Those were people that were there to cause trouble. And you can and I think people that were there in the city that particular night said that, they could sense that.
Yeah, for sure. You also worked with Snoop Dogg in NHL 20. What was that experience like?
It was fun. It was fun. It was, he was everything you would expect or hope for him to be. So the D-O-double-G, he's a big sports fan. Loves his basketball, and it was right, kind of smack dab in the middle of the NBA Finals. So it was Raptors Warriors. So we kind of had some friendly banter as I was more Team Raps, and
Oh yeah, for
he
sure.
was more repping Cali Love. So he was pulling for Golden State, but we had a good discussion, a good debate. He's a diehard Laker fan, and I was as a kid, I was a big Laker fan with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic Johnson, and so we kind of had that mutual bond over Snoop and I, and we had some good laughs because, he's not that much older than I am. And so we kind of had a similar generational upbringing in the sense that, just in terms of the same likes in terms of from pop culture stuff. Right. And so it was good. It was, we had a lot of fun. I definitely had some great laughs and some awesome memories, and he was easy to work with. Like he was one of the coolest things I can say about Snoop Dogg was when he first sat down the first day, he kind of looked at the two producers I was with, David Pritchett and Sean Ram Jagsing, and Timothy Mellenbacher was our other producer who was with us as well. And he kind of just looked at, the group of us and just said, listen, guys, I am not above being told what to do. So, if you need something, better, or you need something from me, like, let me know, and I think he recognized that, like, hey, the better he looks, the better the game looks, the better the game looks, the better he looks. Yeah, that's
true.
So,
good pressing out.
It was, but, he came in very modest and very humble. I think that was something that really stood out for me just right out of the get-go, that, here's a guy who's worth a lot of money.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Insanely successful. I mean, you're talking about one of the, there's a, when you talk about a name that you can pretty much go in most walks of life and say, do you know Snoop Dogg? Yeah, I know Snoop Dogg. Like, you think about that. Like, you walk around, you go around town. If you ask the average person, they probably know who Snoop Dogg is, right?
Yeah.
And so, to kind of go there and for him to be as easy and affable as he was, I enjoyed it. And his compound, his recording studio, his facility was very impressive.
Well, that's good. That so you put in a lot of work and effort, which it did pay off because you started slow, then you got bigger. That's how I'm taking this.
Yeah, with Snoop, or
just in general,
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, Snoop was a fun experience, and the game's been a cool experience, and I would say professionally, like, I've been, it's been a lot of work, but it's been a lot of fun, and there's been some real cool perks in life to experience some really awesome things. You know, the 2010 Olympics was probably the highlight of my experience professionally. To have that 3-week run where, oh man, we as media members were treated like rock stars. Like
I bet you
people
were.
oh, I mean, but like just the energy and the vibe, like as you're touching on the riots earlier and in Vancouver in 2011, but man, like everything that 2011 wasn't like 2010 was. It was
Yeah.
beautiful. It was, you know, if you've ever been to Ottawa on Canada Day on July 1st, that was what 2010 was every day for 3 weeks. Just a sea of passionate Canadians, and just a big love in it, just a good time. And it was a tremendous experience. And that's honestly, like, I've been lucky enough to experience more than a few cool championship experiences. You know, at the Score working, I got to cover the NBA Finals in 2005 between the Spurs and the Pistons, and you know, not necessarily a sexy matchup from a TV standpoint, right? It's not the Lakers,
Yeah,
it's not, you know,
exactly.
LeBron, but man, but, you know, the Spurs, one of the great dynasties and, you know, the last, you know, 50 years, maybe in the history of the game, you know, with Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker and Robert Horry, who was such a big part of that series, and, you know, Big Shot Bob, and, you know, the Bad Boys version 2.0, you know, in the mid 2000s with, you know, Tayshaun Prince and Rasheed Wallace and Big Ben Wallace and, you know, Mr. Big Shot, Chauncey Billups. I mean, that was so much fun. And Antonio McDyess, like, you know, so many big, you know, great stars going head to head in a 7-game series. That was fun. You know, covering 6 World Juniors, you know, Sidney Crosby's first as a 15 or 16-year-old, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, to cover the series, you know, the World Juniors in the year of the lockout with the stacked team, probably the greatest junior team in the history of the tournament, you know, where Canada just ran roughshod, but you had, you know, Sidney Crosby playing on the line with Patrice Bergeron and Corey Perry.
Yeah,
That was your
exactly.
second line. You know, your first line, you had Jeff Carter playing with Ryan Getzlaf and Andrew Ladd. Like, you know, just an insane amount of talent. Mike Richards was a big part of that team, who was so good, you know, won a couple Stanley Cups with the LA Kings, you know, went to the finals with the Philadelphia Flyers as well. You know, there was so many good players, you know, Brent Burns, actually, he might have been the year before, but Dion Phaneuf, Shea Weber, you know, just the list goes on and on. With the talent on that team, such a good experience. Alex Ovechkin in the gold medal final in that tournament. Just to see that, you know, to cover 3 Olympics, you know, 2006 in Turin, 2004 in Athens. You know, the Grey Cups, to cover so many of those over the years have been always fun. As a kid who was a big CFL fan, and you know, still got a lot of love for the Canadian Football League. Yeah, it's been a cool journey to kind of see certain things along the way. UFC, some cool UFC moments. Covered a few WrestleManias. So, you know, it's been working for a living, that's for sure.
That's good. And for our final question I have for you today, do you have any advice for aspiring journalists?
You know, is there anything specific I would say? You know what? Say, you know, follow your dream. You know, be adaptable. You know, be hungry, and don't be afraid to take chances. Don't be afraid to fail. You know, it's okay, because we'll all fail at some point in time. And I know I did, and I have, and I will continue to fail. But don't be afraid to take a chance and, you know, get back up there. You know, one of the first things I would always do when I was so, like, you know, I have such a shy side to me especially when I was younger. And you kind of slowly learn to overcome that. But even to this day, I still know that there's an element of shyness in it, because it's kind of who I am. You get nervous energy. But I would find that I would try to make a point going into these big media scrums or go to a news conference. And I always tried to make a point of asking a question. I just felt like I needed to ask a question, and my heart would pound, you know, even, you know, And I remember thinking like, man, there's probably some questions that probably seem really stupid, but I just felt that I needed to get a question out. And along the way, just slowly mustered up that confidence, and that was something like, even something as simple as that, even, every once in a while you get something, that's a stupid question. And it's like, and you get and you're internally, you're just like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. But you also kind of think to yourself, well, this is something that I think I can, I'm going to try to do. And, if somebody doesn't like the question, okay, I take my kick in the butt and, I'll go back and do it again, because that's what I got to do. Yeah. And that's it. You learn from your experiences, get your reps. That's another thing. If you want to be on air, you got to find a way to polish your craft, and you got to get reps. And not everybody's going to want to put you on the air when you first get hired. Now, the advantage for this now is here we are talking, on a video conference chat and going back and forth. Now you can record yourself. You didn't have that opportunity. I mean, I could tape myself on a tape recorder when I was younger, but that was, unless you had a broadcast studio to really do something, it was hard to do that. So now you can kind of record yourself in a, whether your own home podcast system, and it's not that expensive, or, if you have a smartphone and you can go back and forth with this. So I think that makes a big difference nowadays. But take a chance. Like, don't be afraid to, take a chance and get your reps. That's what I would say.
Awesome. Well, I'd like to thank James Cybulski, who's the, again, NHL 20 play-by-play, for coming on today's Pagcast.
Do you play?
I do play, yes. I play a bunch of times with my friends.
Are you on Xbox or PS4 or what?
PS4.
All right. C-Ball 604.
You're going down. You're going down. You're getting creamed.
Oh, it's on like Donkey Kong, buddy.
All right, awesome. Thank you for coming on.
All right, Michael. Be good, man.